On October 12, 1979, the NBA added a thin, white arc to the floor. It sat 23 feet from the basket, far enough away that most players treated it like a novelty, a gimmick, a risk. Basketball has always been a game built around limits. There are ideas about where shots should be taken from and how long a player is allowed to think before the defense catches up. For decades, those limits were treated like facts. The three-point line, added in 1979, wasn't meant to be the center of the game. It was a boundary, a place you visited only when the situation called for it. For a long time, nobody questioned that. Shooting from deep was something you did occasionally, not something you built an offense around. Distance meant risk, and risk meant inefficiency. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time, not because he shoots from far away, but because distance stopped functioning as a disadvantage when he was the one taking the shot. What used to feel like a gamble became routine. Most shooters need a sequence before they're comfortable. They want time to set their feet, control their body, and get into rhythm. Steph doesn't need that buildup. His shot is already ready when the ball reaches his hands. The motion is so compact that defenders are reacting to a shot that has already happened. That's why contests don't work the way they're supposed to. Even when a defender reads the play correctly, the timing still favors Steph. He isn't creating space in the traditional sense. He's operating in moments so short that the defense can't fully register them. Balance is usually where rushed shots fall apart. For most players, losing control of their body means losing control of the shot. Steph is different. He can be drifting sideways or fading backward and still produce the same result, because his mechanics don't depend on perfect alignment. They adjust on the fly. That's also why his misses don't change his behavior. The process doesn't feel broken to him, even when the shot doesn't go in. From his perspective, the look was clean, and that's enough. What really separates Steph from every other shooter is that none of this falls apart when the volume increases. NBA history is full of players who were efficient because they were careful. Steph takes an extreme number of threes, many of them off the dribble and under pressure, and his efficiency barely moves. League average from three usually sits in the mid-30s. 40% is considered excellent. Steph lives well above that line while being guarded more aggressively than anyone else who has ever taken that many shots. Defenses know exactly what he's trying to do. They pick him up far from the basket and send extra help earlier than they want to. They communicate constantly because losing track of him for even a moment is usually enough. None of that solves the problem. The reason is that Steph's shooting doesn't just produce points. It changes how the defense behaves. Help defenders hesitate. Big men step higher than they're comfortable with. Passing lanes open because defenders are worried about something that hasn't happened yet. This is often described as gravity, but that word doesn't fully explain it. Gravity implies a slow pull. What Steph creates is more immediate. The defense is always on edge, reacting to the possibility of a shot rather than the shot itself. A big part of that comes from how dangerous he is without the ball. Steph doesn't stand still and wait to be found. He keeps moving, forcing defenders to chase him through screens and traffic. Over time, that movement wears people down and creates mistakes that don't show up in the box score. Most stars dominate the ball. Steph dominates attention. The defense has to account for him even when someone else is holding it, which changes the math of every possession. Then there's the range, which gets talked about more than anything else. Yes, Steph regularly shoots from distances that used to be off-limits. Those shots look wild because we're trained to think they are. For him, they're often the cleanest option available. He understands exactly how much space and time he needs, and those margins are smaller than anyone else's. That's why the records followed naturally. The most made threes, seasons that don't make sense compared to the rest of the league, performances that no one has been able to replicate even as three-point attempts have exploded across the NBA. But the records are a result, not the explanation. The real impact is that Steph forced basketball to update its logic. Shots that used to be discouraged are now taught. Players who would have been told to stop shooting are now encouraged to keep going. The game didn't change because it wanted to. It changed because it had to. There was a time when the three-point line was treated like a warning. Steph Curry turned it into an invitation. That's why he's the greatest shooter of all time. Not just because of what he makes, but because of what he made possible.
When you played basketball when you were younger, who did you look up to? Who showed you to not be scared to shoot from deep? That was Steph Curry. Steph might have impacted the game more than any other NBA superstar in history, even the great Michael Jordan.
Steph turned the three ball from a dangerous shot you would only see a few times a game into one of the most used shots in the NBA. Don't believe me? Let's look at the average points scored per game in 1990 versus 2017. In 1990, the average points scored by NBA students per game was about 101 points per game. That's a lot of points, right? In the 2000s, the average points per game from an NBA team was between 100 and 112. Now, guess the average points scored by teams during Steph's prime in 2017. 123 points per game. Since the 80s, the average has gone up. That's because of Steph. He showed other superstars that shooting a three is the key to winning a game, rather than a dangerous way to make your stats look bad. Steph was so dominant at shooting threes that he changes how the game is played in the last 1 minute. That's greatness. In the last 1 minute of a basketball game, if you were down by 10, it was considered a loss by the team. They would let the clock run out after they foul the opposing team in desperation of maybe shortening the gap. But honestly, they knew the game was over. Steph changed this when himself and Klay Thompson scored 15 points together while trailing by 10 to secure a win in a game that seemed improbable to win. Debates such as who is better, MJ or LeBron, or Steph or Magic, are big talking points in the sport of basketball, both topics that we will dive into on this channel. But one thing that should not be debated is the greatest shooter of all time. Wondering who it is? I'll give you a hint. Look on your screen. If we're being honest, who would compare to Steph Curry? James Harden? Damian Lillard? Don't get me wrong, both of those names are fantastic shooters, but they couldn't hold a candle to what Steph has been able to do. He was the catalyst behind the three-point line becoming a spot that superstars have to step up on. Stephen Curry stands alone as the greatest shooter in basketball history because he didn't just excel at shooting, he completely changed what shooting means in the NBA. His unmatched combination of range, accuracy, off-ball movement, and lightning-quick release has forced defenses to guard him the moment he crosses half-court. Curry's shooting success isn't built on size or athletic advantage, but on skill, repetition, and basketball IQ, making it sustainable and undeniable. He has shattered three-point records while maintaining elite efficiency on the highest volume the league has ever seen. More importantly, his shooting directly translates to winning, proven by championships, MVPs, and countless clutch moments on the biggest stages. Every generation has great shooters, but none have bent defenses, spacing, and strategy the way Curry has. When you combine statistical dominance, eye-test brilliance, and historical impact, the debate ends. Stephen Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. Topics such as who is the GOAT of basketball or Nikola Jokic, the secret underdog that nobody is ready to recognize, are videos that will be coming to the channel shortly. If those ideas interest you, stick around for my upcoming videos.